Curated Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION@CUENDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 31st of July 2024. From the news section. Families pay tribute as trio killed in motorbike crash are named. This article was written by Mark McDougall and read by me, Corey. The families of two people who died in a motorcycle crash in the Scottish borders have paid tribute to them. Andrew Larty, 29, and his 23-year-old pillion passenger, Georgia Tate, died in the crash on the A6088 between Bonchester Bridge and Carter Bar on Sunday in a collision that involved a second motorbike. The families of both Andrew and Georgia say they will be sorely missed as they request privacy. A joint statement said, "We are devastated by the loss of Georgia and Andrew. They will be sorely missed by all who knew them. We ask for our privacy to be respected at this difficult time." Sergeant Barry Somerville said, "Our thoughts remain with the family and friends of the three people who died. Our inquiries are ongoing and we continue to appeal to anyone with information that could help to please get in touch." The third victim of the crash has now also been named as 37-year-old Jason Gibbon from Northumberland. His family said, "We are devastated of the loss of a much-loved son, brother, uncle, boyfriend, and devoted friend to many. He will be greatly, sadly missed. We are comforted by the messages from many. We would like to ask for privacy to allow the family to grieve at this very difficult time." That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Mark McDougall, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 31st of July 2024. From the news section. Hugh Edwards pleads guilty to making indecent images of children. This article was written by Mark McDougall and read by me, Corey. Former BBC News presenter Hugh Edwards has pleaded guilty to 3 counts of making indecent images of children. He appeared in court on Wednesday morning after the Met Police confirmed that he had been charged earlier this week. The offences took place between December 2020 and April 2022 and related to images that were shared in a WhatsApp chat. He was charged with having 7 Category A images, which are the most serious, 12 Category B images, and 22 Category C images. The court was told that the estimated ages of the children pictured in the worst of the images were between 13 and 15. But one of them was aged between 7 and 9. The bulk of the images were sent over a 2-month period and included a Category A film of a young boy. A spokesperson for the NSPCC said, "Online child sexual abuse offences can have a devastating impact on victims, and we should be in no doubt about the seriousness of Edward's crimes. It can be extremely traumatic for young people to know sexual images of themselves have been shared online. Childline and Internet Watch Foundation's report removal tool can help young people who have suffered in this way to get the images removed. We also need to see online platforms do much more to identify and disrupt child abuse in private messaging services in order to safeguard young people. Edwards was bailed and will be sentenced at Westminster Magistrates Court on September 16th. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Mark McDougall, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday, the 31st of July, 2024. From the news section. Plans approved for major new waterside neighbourhood in Glasgow. This article was written by Craig Williams, and it's being read by me, Corey. Plans have been approved for a major new waterside neighbourhood on the banks of the River Clyde in Glasgow. The plans, submitted by waterside regeneration specialists Peel Water, will see a currently derelict brownfield site transformed into a vibrant waterfront neighbourhood connecting the west end of Glasgow to the city centre. The plans, which have been approved by Glasgow City Council, include 1,100 new homes for the open market, build-to-rent and co-living sectors, alongside a 200-bedroom hotel, commercial space and 2,500 square metres of land for leisure use. The new Yorkhill Quay neighbourhood sits within Peel's wider emerging Glasgow Waters district, which is already home to the award-winning Clydeside Distillery and the Riverside Museum. New walkways and cycleways will run along a new waterfront promenade stretching along Yorkhill Quay, which will help connect neighbourhoods in Partick and Finnieston, as well as the riverfront between the celebrated tourist attractions. A series of river rooms and south-facing terraces with views of the historic River Clyde have been designed to maximise the river frontage, creating spaces for the public to use, improving their access to nature, and establishing new outdoor spaces to explore and play whilst offering enhanced well-being. Meanwhile, waterfront retail and leisure units will run along the development, offering plenty of amenity space and commercial opportunities for both independent and established businesses. Brian Lavalette, Property Director for Scotland at Peel Waters, said, "It's great to see the planning consent come through for this fantastic sustainable development at Glasgow Waters. Glasgow Waters is one of the largest and most exciting regeneration projects in Scotland, and Yorkhill Quay will be a major landmark development within it, delivering much needed new homes, improved connectivity and infrastructure, whilst creating a pipeline for new jobs for our community. We now look forward to partnering up with leading innovative developers and specialists to transform this derelict brownfield site into a vibrant waterfront neighbourhood with a thriving community." Glasgow Waters is part of Peel Waters, a UK-wide portfolio of vibrant and innovative waterfront developments, delivering large-scale sustainable regeneration projects, creating jobs, economic growth, new homes and new public realm across the country. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Craig Williams, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 31st of July 2024. From the news section. Unite launch Fair Pay and Fair Tips campaign ahead of new law. This article was written by Mark McDougall and read by me, Corey. A campaign has been launched for fair pay and fair tips for hospitality workers ahead of new tipping laws being introduced. Unite represent thousands of hospitality workers and launched the nationwide campaign to ensure the workers in the lowest paid sector receive fair pay and fair tips. The union's campaign comes ahead of new tips legislation, which comes into effect on October 1st. That will obligate employers to hand over 100% of all tips in a fair and transparent manner by the end of next month. Unite say the campaign is necessary given the regrettable history of the sector in the way it treats many of its workers. This campaign is being launched to ensure workers understand their rights and have the support and tools they need to enforce them. The campaign will also name and shame employers who try to ignore or distort the new legislation or who attempt to suppress wages to boost their profits. The Employment Fair Allocation of Tips Act comes in later this year, and under the Act, workers can take their employer to tribunal for failure to ensure fair tips within 12 months of a breach. A judge can then order the reallocation of tips plus up to £5,000 compensation for each worker impacted. Sharon Graham, Unite General Secretary, said, "Unite is passionate in its support for hospitality workers, and it will leave no stone unturned in supporting our members who are facing exploitation by employers. If employers think they can continue to get away with failing to give workers their tips or docking their pay, they need to think again. Unite will use every avenue to ensure our members secure pay and tip justice." The union has laid out their 5 aims for the campaign, and it starts with workers being paid enough so they don't rely on tips. It also wants workers to receive 100% of the tips they do receive without any employer deductions. Transparency is next for them, and workers should be able to see how many tips have been collected and distributed. They believe the tips should be distributed equitably according to job role and wage, and they want workers who earn tips to decide what is fair through a democratically elected TRONC committee. Brian Simpson, Unite's lead organiser for the hospitality sector, said, "While legislation to regulate tips is very much needed, it doesn't mean fair tips are guaranteed. Workers must collectively demand them through their union, which is why we have launched the Fair Pay, Fair Tips campaign, to give hospitality workers the knowledge and tools to organise their workplace to win the pay and tips they deserve." Unite hospitality members have a history of winning fairer tips. In 2018, they took historic strike action at TGI Fridays for a better policy, while in 2022, workers at Cameron House won back £138,000 in unpaid tips and service charge when it was discovered their employer hadn't been fair or transparent with their distribution. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Mark McDougall, and it was read by me, Corey.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 31st of July 2024, from the business section. Glasgow engineering giant delivers bullish outlook. This article is by Scott Wright. Shares in Weir Group closed up nearly 4% as the Glasgow engineering giant flagged its expectations of higher margins and its growing pipeline of greenfield orders, following a challenging first half of the year. The company, which supplies parts and original equipment to the global mining industry, underlined its confidence of meeting expectations for the year as it reported a 3% fall in pre-tax profits to £165 million for 6 months ended June 30th, and downgraded revenue expectations for the year amid macroeconomic and geopolitical tension. Chief Executive John Stanton hailed robust conditions in the mining market and the resilience of Weir's aftermarket business following a second quarter which saw probably more moving parts than I have seen for a long while in terms of specific mine closures and some regions affected by conflicts. However, investors lifted shares as Weir flagged its expectation of higher margins for the full year and growing pipeline of orders for the second half. The company said aftermarket orders rose by 2% in the first half, despite challenges caused by conflict and military coups in Central and West Africa, as well as headwinds brought by shutdowns by nickel and lithium operators in Australia and ongoing mine closures in Panama and Turkey. Weir said the strength of the copper and gold markets had more than offset the impact of shutdowns and hailed the emergence of major greenfield projects, principally in Asia and Africa. These include a £53 million contract awarded in July for a greenfield mine in southern Asia, which will utilize Weir's high-pressure grinding rolls. Mr. Stanton told the Herald, "I'm delighted we were able to grow our aftermarket orders by 2%, and on the project side, we are highlighting that finally, after talking about projects being slow to convert, we are now starting to see some larger projects moving ahead. There are a number of other projects coming through the pipeline, not quite at that size, but between £10 million and £40 million. We are hoping to convert over the remainder of the year. The outlook for new mines is looking positive, albeit they are more Eastern Hemisphere based. There is a lot of activity in Africa, Southern and Central Asia, and Asia Pacific. It is not necessarily the UK-listed miners who are getting on with it, but miners from other parts of the world. And of course, with our global footprint, we are in great shape to capture that." Mr. Stanton added, "The second quarter feels like the bottom of the current cycle, and we are picking up from here, which is great. That said, we delivered strong profit growth, up 8% to £215 million in constant currency. Our margin performance was phenomenal in the first half of the year, up nearly 2% from 16 to 17.8%, and that is about strong delivery of our Performance Excellence program, good underlying efficiencies, and good cost control, as well as some benefit from product mix in the first half. We are well on our way to delivering our 20% margin target in 2026. Mr. Stanton said, despite the company nudging down its revenue guidance for the year, Weir expects its operating margin to be higher than previously guided, meaning net profits are bang in line with consensus. He noted, "We had a very strong cash performance in the first half of the year, so that really underpins our confidence in the step-up in pre-operating cash conversion we are targeting this year." Meanwhile, Mr. Stanton highlighted the prospect of Donald Trump imposing import tariffs across the Atlantic should he lead the Republican Party to victory in the US election in November. Trump has previously said he would introduce a 10% import tariff on all goods entering the US if he regains power. "We have been there before and managed that in terms of tariffs, if they come through," Mr. Stanton said. "Generally, the macroeconomic outlook is more positive than it has been for a while, with inflation generally under control and interest rate reductions potentially coming over the balance of the year. So I think it is looking slightly more positive, albeit depending on the outcome of some of the elections and other factors. I do think we have to be careful about inflation in the medium to longer term. It does have the potential, to my mind, to come back. There are inflationary pressures out there, and the geopolitical tensions heighten that. Shares closed up 3.63% or 70 pence at 2,000 pence. That article was by Scott Wright. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 31st of July, 2024, from the business section. Guinness is a bright spot in challenging year for Diageo. This article is by Victoria Masterson. Guinness sales were a bright spot for drinks group Diageo, as it reported lower than expected annual sales and profits in a challenging year. The company, which employs around 3,000 people in Scotland and produces brands including Smirnoff, Baileys, Johnnie Walker and Talisker, said consumers were more cautious, but that it was confident of returning to growth. For the year to the 30th of June, Diageo posted a 4.8% fall in operating profits to $6 billion on group sales down 0.6% to $20.3 billion. Deborah Crew, Diageo chief executive, described 2024 as a challenging year for both our industry and Diageo. She added, with continued macroeconomic and geopolitical volatility, we focused on taking the actions needed to ensure Diageo is well positioned for growth as the consumer environment improves. Diageo said $302 million of its $304 million fall in operating profits was attributable to Latin America and the Caribbean, where sales fell more than 21% as consumers turned to cheaper drinks and local spirits. Sales in North America were also down 2.5% in a cautious consumer environment. But in Europe, strong sales of stout brand Guinness, including 5% net sales growth in Britain, helped to fuel an 18% growth in beer sales and 12% sales growth overall for the region. Ewan Andrew, Diageo's president of Global Supply and Procurement, said, "We used to run a Guinness is good for you campaign, and we've seen in these results that Guinness has also been good for Diageo." The brand has seen double-digit growth globally for 7 consecutive years. It's a high-quality premium drink, Mr. Andrew added, but it's still actually very affordable. Higher interest rates and sticky inflation were contributing to consumer caution, Mr. Andrews said. There was also uncertainty around their future wallets with regards to so much political change in elections. Consumers are still buying premium products, but maybe in their shopping basket they're buying a little less, he said. Diageo has 30 single malt whisky distilleries across Scotland, and Singleton was a star performer among these. The brand, which is produced across 3 distilleries at Dufftown in Moray and Muir of Ord in the Black Isle, grew global sales 9% last year, against a 9% fall in sales across Diageo's Scotch malt whisky portfolio. Talisker also continued to be the world's #1 peated malt for the 3rd year in a row. Other highlights during the year included the reopening after 40 years of the Port Ellen distillery on the island of Islay, and the release of Brora Iris, a single bottle of 50-year-old malt from the Brora distillery in Sutherland that sold for £400,000 in a charity auction. Diageo said it was winning or holding market share in markets generating 75% of its sales, including the United States. It was confident that sales growth would return and is focused on getting back to its medium-term target of 5% to 7% net sales growth from existing operations, though it couldn't say when this might be. We continue to believe demographic trends, rising incomes in the developing world, spirits gaining share from beer and wine, and the long-standing trend of premiumization, which is consumers trading up to better quality products, will help to drive attractive underlying growth in our markets, the company said. Aaron Chikri, an equity analyst at Hargreaves Lansdown, said, "While there remains some short-term uncertainty in the drinks market, Diageo's cash flows remain extremely healthy, and the dividend has been bumped up by 5% to reward investors for their patience." Diageo said it had delivered record productivity savings of nearly $700 million and plans another $2 billion savings over 3 years across cost of goods, marketing spend, and overheads. The company said it had also generated $2.6 billion in free cash flow, cash after accounting for operational and capital spending, while increasing strategic investments. Diageo's shares fell almost 10% in early trading before recovering to close down 5% at 2,421 pence. That article was by Victoria Masterson. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 31st of July 2024, from the business section. Historic restaurant in picture postcard location for sale. This article is by Brian Donnelly. An historic restaurant in a charming Scottish village has been put on the market for sale. Cornerstone business agents said the Eat on the Green restaurant occupies a coaching inn site dating back 200 years. Offered in exceptional walk-in condition for an ambitious chef and motivated buyer, Cornerstone said. Visitors are charmed by the local hostelry, beautiful cottages, and a church forming an enclosed square around a village green. The property and business have been well invested in by our clients and offer an attractive business opportunity in a sought-after rural Aberdeenshire village. The business offers a stylish and bespoke bar and a sumptuous dining room to include a private chef's table. The agent also said there is an outstanding external gin bar located in a delightful secret garden outdoor trading space. The premises have been run by the current owner for 20 years, specializing as a high-quality restaurant destination. The Udney business benefits from a sought-after affluent locale drawing custom from locals, the outlying area, as well as Aberdeen City and the neighbouring high-quality hotel offerings. The subjects consist of a well-proportioned, fully detached property occupying a picture postcard location in the centre of this charming village, Cornerstone also said. One of the most attractive aspects of the business is the high-quality, unique outside trading areas to accompany the business. These areas consist of a secret garden to include a beautifully fully enclosed gin bar, an extensive beer garden and patio to include a fully covered marquee for 55. Additionally, there is also a private off-street car park, garage, shed, as well as former outhouse property. Udney Green is a unique village offering a picture postcard charm reminiscent of a Cotswold-style English village. Cornerstone business agent said the Eat on the Green restaurant is offered at a guide price of £475,000. That article was by Brian Donnelly.
This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 1st of August from the news section. 8 days of bin strikes confirmed as unions reject COSLA pay offer. This article is written by Andrew Learmonth. Scottish councils have been told to prepare for 8 days of strikes, with GMB and Unite members ready to walk out over pay. The unions have joined Unison in formally serving notice on local authorities to expect industrial action by waste and recycling workers on the 14th of August. That means bins will go unemptied, including in Edinburgh, where the International Festival and Festival Fringe are due to start this weekend. Talks between the unions, COSLA leaders and Finance Secretary Shona Robertson ended on Tuesday without a deal. Scotland's cash-strapped councils insist that their offer of 3.2% pay rise, backdated to April, is at the absolute limit of affordability. But the three unions are looking for parity with counterparts in England, who have been offered a pay rise of £1,290, which represents a 5.2% rise for those earning £25,000 a year. Keir Greenaway, GMB Scotland's senior organiser, said, "We had constructive talks with the Scottish Government and COSLA yesterday, but our members are less interested in constructive talks than fair pay. The process has gone on too long with too little progress. There is no more time to waste talking about old offers with new wrapping. Enough is enough. Industrial action will start in 2 weeks unless ministers and local authorities urgently identify the money needed to make a fair and acceptable offer. These strikes will be disruptive to all the Scots who rely on our members' work, but would not be necessary if councils had shown a greater urgency and sense of realism." COSLA's resources spokesperson, Councillor Katie Hagman, said, "There were financial challenges facing local government in relation to meeting pay claims." She said Ms Robertson had been asked to find cash to help councils. Councillor Hagman said, whilst no immediate solution was identified, officers will now undertake further work at pace in the coming days to explore all options to avoid industrial action. However, I reiterated to the Cabinet Secretary the very limited options available to local government, and that any solution needs to be both affordable and sustainable. The Chancellor's announcements about public sector pay were also discussed, as were the expectations that Ms Rees has now set in relation to public sector pay. We did, however, acknowledge the Chancellor's reference to multi-year budgets and the opportunities this could present for a multi-year pay deal. COSLA remains committed to continuing our negotiations towards finding a solution as quickly as possible, seeking to do all we can to avoid industrial action and its damaging impact on our communities. Council leaders value the local government workforce and the essential work across our communities. They recognise the workforce pressures and the need to reward equitably. Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham said, "Thousands of Unite members will take strike action next month unless there is a new credible pay offer put on the table. Our membership has waited months for an offer, which reflects their professionalism and the dedication which they put into delivering vital local services." That article was written by Andrew Learmonth. This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 1st of August, from the news section. Yousaf calls for English Defence League to be proscribed. This article is written by Andrew Learmonth. Humza Yousaf has called on the Home Secretary to proscribe the English Defence League, EDL, as a terrorist organisation, after hundreds of activists believed to be linked to the far-right group wreaked havoc on the streets of Southport. Police officers suffered serious injuries when bricks, stones and bottles were thrown and cars were set alight during violent protests outside a local mosque, following a vigil for 3 girls killed in a knife attack at a Taylor Swift-themed holiday club. Alice da Silva Aguirre, 9, B.B. King, 6, and Elsie Stancombe, 7, were all fatally stabbed in Southport on Monday, while a 17-year-old boy who cannot be named for legal reasons because of his age remains in custody, accused of murder and attempted murder. Merseyside police said a large group of people, believed to be supporters of the English Defence League, began to throw items such as bricks towards the mosque in the seaside town at about 7:45 p.m. Elsa's mother, Jenny Stancombe, wrote on Facebook, "This is the only thing that I will write, but please, please stop the violence in Southport tonight. The police have been nothing but heroic these last 24 hours, and they and we don't need this." Some 27 officers were taken to hospital, with 12 others being treated and discharged at the scene, North West Ambulance Service said. Misinformation about the Southport attacker has been spread on a number of social media platforms, with conspiracies about a link to Islam. The only details released about the suspect by police are that he is a 17-year-old from the village of Banks in Lancashire, and that he was born in Cardiff. The BBC has reported that his parents are from Rwanda and that he has no known links to Islam. While police say the motive is unclear, they do not believe it is terror-related. In a letter, Mr. Yousaf urged the new Home Secretary to show courage and do the right thing and proscribe the English Defence League and their proxies. That would make it a criminal offence to belong to support the group. In his letter to Yvette Cooper, the former First Minister said the group of far-right bigots had hijacked the killing of children for their own nefarious purposes. He said this was not the first time this group and their offshoots have been involved in attacking the police, violent disorder, and peddling hatred. It is time we took on the English Defence League and the evil ideology that drives them. Mr. Yousaf said the group's action would be caught under the legal definition of terrorism. There can be no doubt that the EDL meet these criteria. They have, on several occasions, orchestrated serious violence to both intimidate the public and attempt to influence government, while being driven by a racist, white, supremacist ideology. The ex-SNP leader said Britain has a far-right problem. He added, "We need to acknowledge it, confront, deal with it. You're in the unique position to tackle this insidious problem. Proscribing the English Defence League and therefore making membership of this organisation a criminal offence would send an unequivocally strong signal of your intent to take on the far right and their Islamophobic ideology." The Home Office has been approached for comment. That article was written by Andrew Learmonth.
The Herald on the 2nd of August and the sports section calls for greatest ever Andy Murray to be honoured after retirement by Mark McDougall. The Scottish Parliament has been asked to support a motion calling on Holyrood to honour the achievements of and legacy of Andy Murray. The motion has been tabled by Alba's Ash Regan, who is the party's leader at Holyrood, and called on the Scottish Government to pay tribute to one of Scotland's greatest ever athletes after his retirement from tennis last night. The 37-year-old retired from professional tennis after losing out in the quarter-final of the men's doubles at the Olympics alongside partner Dan Evans. They had fought hard to reach this stage, having had impressive victories over Japan and Belgium. He's already viewed as one of Scotland's greatest ever sportspeople, and now a motion is being set for the Scottish Government to honour him in Parliament. As part of the motion, the Dunblane Star achievements were laid out, and they include 3 Grand Slam titles, including 2 Wimbledons and 2 Olympic gold medals. Ms Reagan has now called on cross-part support across the Parliament to back the government, bringing forward plans to suitably honour Murray's legacy. Alba say this could include long-lasting investment in the next generation of young tennis players. They say they have long advocated for free access to sports facilities for Scotland's youngsters, and are hopefully Murray will be an inspiration to the next generation, regardless of whether they want to enter the sport or have fun and live a healthier life. The motion from Ms Reagan said the Parliament offers its thanks to Sir Andy Murray on his retirement from tennis. Parliament congratulates His unprecedented career record, which it understands includes 1,001 single matches, 739 victories, 105 top 10 wins, 46 ATP titles, 41 weeks as world number one, 29 wins over the big three, 14 Masters 1000 titles, 11 Grand Slam finals, 3 Grand Slam titles, and 2 Olympic gold medals. Further, it is noted that not only was Sir Andy Murray a champion on the court, but also a supportive influence to young players off the court, and one of the leading supporters of pay equality for women in tennis. The Scottish Parliament calls on the Scottish Government to mark the career of Sir Andy Murray and the positive impact he has had on Scottish society by bringing forward a suitable proposal to Parliament to honour his achievements and legacy. And that was by Mark McDougall. The Herald on the 2nd of August and the sports section. William Hill host launch party for a record-breaking SPFL deal by Mark McDougall. William Hill celebrated the record-breaking 5-year partnership with the SPFL with a launch event of their new HQ in Glasgow. It also scheduled a behind-the-scenes look at the set of the new William Hill SPL preview show, The Warm-Up, which will be hosted by broadcaster Gordon Duncan and YouTube creator Sam North. The show will take a look at the Premiership, Championship, League 1 and League 2 ahead of the weekend football action each week. The SPFL announced the deal in June this year following the end of their contract with car company Cinch. Speaking at the time, SPFL Chief Executive Neil Doncaster said William Hill is a name long associated with Scottish football, and we are enormously excited to have reached a long-term record-breaking agreement with our new title sponsors. This is tremendous news for our clubs and their fans, for the profile of the league, and for Scottish football in general. In addition, the sponsorship with William Hill, our pioneering gambling harm awareness program with Epic, will help to educate communities across the 42 SPFL clubs on gambling harm prevention. Everyone at the SPFL is looking forward to working with William Hill to promote the passion, drama and excitement of the league and its 42 clubs over the next 5 seasons, as well as the rollout of our programme with EPIC. I would also like to place on record our sincere thanks to Cinch for its extremely positive contribution to Scottish football over the past 3 years and wish them and their management team the very best for the future. And that was by Mark McDougall.
The Herald, Monday the 5th of August, from the news section. Dementia expert on the cost of care and assisted dying fears. Kevin McKenna interview. Professor June Andrews is keen to remove much of the emotion that swirls around the debate on assisted dying. A few minutes in the company of this globally respected dementia expert challenges some of your assumptions and red lines. Still, though, some aspect of what's being proposed in Liam MacArthur's assisted dying bill can't easily be conveyed in diplomatic language. Professor Andrews, a former pupil of Ardrossan Academy, has been awarded an OBE for services to people with dementia, and her work in this field has been recognised by awards and teaching posts throughout Europe, Canada and the US. She has expressed deep concerns about aspects of Liam MacArthur's assisted dying bill progressing through Holyrood. The long campaign to make this law will come to a head in the autumn. Yet, while a host of A-listers have expressed support for the proposed legislation, several disabled organisations have become increasingly disturbed. They believe that once such legislation passes into law, disabled people will come to be regarded as an unjustifiable drain on the nation's resources, and that subjective quality of life measurements will be applied to bring pressure to bear on them. The main issue is lack of clarity about what exactly is being asked for, says Professor Andrews. When people see the details of how these things are put into practice, they don't like it. What drugs are involved and how are they administered? Are they the kind that are used in American executions? And, given the practical problems with botched executions, what data do we have on the common problems? such as the person retching for hours, regaining consciousness, or death being delayed for hours or days. How much of these unintended side effects are we prepared to risk? Although we might quibble about words, this is really about legalised euthanasia. Assisted dying sounds like help when I'm dying. That could mean help with distressing symptoms, but that's already possible without legislation. Currently, the resource available to support humans who are at the end of life is inadequate. New legislation that required every health board and local authority to provide adequate support at the end of life would be better, but more expensive than a new law allowing health boards to end the lives of patients, even at their own request. Does she think there needs to be a wider debate about society's attitudes to care for the elderly and infirm and how it's funded? I don't think it's so much a debate about attitudes to older people, but about our own preparation for later life. Research indicates that people fear dementia more than cancer. Yet many people I know with dementia are very happy for a long time. A lot of the education for nurses and others caring for people at the extreme end of dementia is about making things better. The terrible things I've seen are usually the result of poor care, badly trained staff, badly designed facilities, lack of resources and other issues that could be resolved simply with more money. Most of the cost of care of older people who are frail or have dementia falls on the individuals themselves and their family carers, thus breaking the cradle-to-grave promise of the NHS. Because people are surviving longer, the cost of this promise, if the government was to fulfil it, is now so great that only a radical change in the taxation system would fix it. A lot of care is currently provided by the amassed capital of older people who benefited from the financial windfall of buying, below value, their rented home or council house, or the middle class benefit of lifelong home ownership. There's now a question of how care will be paid for in future, as the current generation finds it hard to get on the home ownership ladder at all. It's not about our attitudes to the elderly, but our attitudes to our own old age and end of life, and how we can make it the best it can be. Most old people don't go into care homes. Most people don't die in agony. New legislation should be about preventing major problems by getting people to plan for the future. Currently, you need to do that on your own. Maybe one day, as a society, we will do that together. Some of the unintended consequences of Mr. MacArthur's bill are less about moral and ethical solutions and more about cost effectiveness. That as a cost of free health delivery continues to vex politicians, so care for older people comes to be regarded as low-hanging fruit and the path of least resistance. Professor Andrews feels this is a process that's been occurring for several decades. The NHS had already passed a lot of the cost of care for frail older people out of its responsibility. Geriatric hospitals have all but disappeared and been replaced by care in the community. When people talk about bed blockers or delayed discharge, they're talking mainly about older people, probably with cognitive impairment, who should not be in an acute hospital. But there are now no long-stay geriatric services to pass them to. On a visit to Scotland 2 years ago, the renowned Canadian palliative care expert, Professor Leonie Herx, spoke in graphic terms about the consequences of similar legislation in her home country. She described this as a form of eugenics, where decisions are being made on which people get to live on the basis of whether a third party thinks they have sort of lives that are worth living. It's begun targeting not just the elderly and people with dementia, but those with mental health issues rooted in poverty and trauma. Those national disability groups in the UK who have expressed similar concerns about the assisted dying bill feel that it may normalise the concept of subjectively deciding which lives are worth living. Professor Andrews agrees. She also fears that people who become physically disabled are vulnerable to depression and thus more prone to thoughts of suicide, and that we should be addressing this as part of their care package. She believes, though, that it's overly simplistic to blame the government. We get the government we deserve, she says. Many people are in a lottery where they're left to hope that they're not one of the unlucky ones who gets frail and becomes expensive. And taking their chances that they won't, they'll vote against raising taxes and thus sharing the risk of getting frail and expensive with everyone else. Yet, if they lose this bet, they'll still complain that, although they worked hard for all of their lives, they're now having to sell their assets to pay for care, even though I paid my taxes. There's a failure to acknowledge that they've already drawn down heavily on the quantum of taxes they've paid. Your average 70-year-old has probably had free nursery care, free schooling, maybe free university, and lots of health care along the way, including operations and emergencies. They may have had the benefits of low-cost council housing and been able to buy that house. They'll have had pension entitlement and child benefit while living in a free society with defended borders. No matter how much you've paid in tax, what you have left won't last very long in a care home at £2,000 a week. She mentions criticism of the Scottish Government for sending infected elderly patients back into care homes, but suggests that the roots of this practice run deeper and challenge what the rest of us are prepared to accept. We had a highly centralised government which was trying to do its best with the information it had. It possessed very little knowledge or understanding of old age and frailty, and no control of how care homes work. Many care homes made huge sacrifices, yet were made pariahs by a government which sanctioned the NHS, which itself was also making mistakes. The problematic attitude was one of central controlling forces, unable to believe that they were wrong or that they should listen to anyone outside their immediate circle. The fact that old people died in such numbers is related to the fact that they'd been allowed to languish in hospital in the first place. That's the underlying problem, and again, that's just about money. My final question doesn't really need to be asked, because we both probably agree on the answer. How much more are we prepared to pay for end-of-life care for other people? That was an article by Kevin McKenna.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 5th of August, from the politics section. As Labour honeymoon ends, talk of a comeback for one Tory. Report by Alison Rowett, senior politics and featured writer. To everything in politics there is a season, or at least there used to be. At this point, the summer news cycle, with Westminster now joining Holyrood in recess, the talk among those still left in the steamy should be of minor things, like where the Prime Minister is going on holiday, and how Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner will fare when he does. Images of far-right mobs rioting across England and in Belfast have put paid to any such talk. Unless Downing Street has lost the plot, there will be no photos of Sir Keir Starmer relaxing in a taverna, David Cameron, walking in the Alps, Theresa May, or sprinting along a beach with an energetic King Charles Spaniel, Margaret Thatcher, any time soon. Just in case there were any lingering doubts that the Labour government's honeymoon period is over, along came the numbers to confirm it. A poll published on Saturday by Opinion shows Starmer's approval rating down 16% since the general election. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, fares worse than her boss, with an approval rating down 23%. There is no mystery about the latter. Last Monday, Reeves blamed the previous Conservative government for a £22 billion gap in the public finances and announced that the means testing of winter fuel payments for pensioners. She also admitted for the first time that certain taxes, as yet unspecified, would have to rise in her first budget on October 30th. Opinion polled voters on some of the ways Reeves intends to spend and raise money. While most people approved of public sector pay rises, a windfall tax on the profits of energy companies, and charging VAT on private school fees, 49% gave a thumbs down to scrapping winter fuel payments to pensioners not in benefits. The axing of winter fuel payments went down badly in Scotland, with pressure now on the Scottish Government to reject the move when it takes over responsibility for the benefit this winter. Add to this Downing Street's refusal to lift the two-child benefit cap, and you can see why some in the party are uncomfortable. Labour wins power after 14 years of austerity, and pensioners and children in poverty are the first groups it comes after. The optics are bad and the politics questionable, unless Labour thinks it is electoral advantage to be gained from being tough on pensioners and poor families. All political honeymoon periods come to an end eventually. The gap between what a government says it will do and what it does is always going to be evident, but there was a notable impatience, stoked by Reeve's predecessor Jeremy Hunt, that Labour was too quick to play the "there's no money left" card, and that the biggest reason for the £22 billion black hole was Reeve's handing over inflation pay rises to the public sector. One way or another, there has been a cooling off among voters who handed Starmer a landslide victory. Many of these votes were loaned to the party by disgruntled Tories and other tactical voters. Contrast Starmer's all too brief honeymoon period with the 6 months it took him to come off Tony Blair's administration. Blair's first worst week began when a news broke of a £1 million donation to the party by Formula One boss Bernie Ecclestone. F1 was subsequently given exemption from the ban on tobacco sponsorship. Blair denied there was any link. Appearing on the BBC's On the Record, the Sunday with Laura Kuenssberg of its day, he apologised for how the matter had been handled, insisting he was a pretty straight sort of guy. Sketch writers had fun with that, and the amount of makeup Blair was wearing. Starmer, who was head of the Crown Prosecution Service at the time of the 2011 riots in England, has so far appeared assured in his handling of the current disturbances, as has his Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. But the rows over the winter fuel payments and planned tax rises are not going away. Reeves, as Chancellor, is in the frame for both. Reeves had been due to be interviewed by LBC broadcaster Ian Dale at the Fringe yesterday, but the event was cancelled. Dale has had to withdraw from all his Edinburgh appearances this year because of a perforated gallbladder. The show goes on in most cases, however, with broadcaster Matthew Stanlin standing in. Among those listed to appear on the Ian Dale All Top podcast are Wes Streeting, UK Health Secretary, definitely one to check, former Prime Minister Liz Truss, and former First Minister Humza Yousaf. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sawar is another cancellation. On Saturday it was the turn of Alex Salmond and Ruth Davidson to be interviewed by Stadlin. The ex-First Minister and Alba leader described Trump as erratic. He suggested the former president may have a difficult time against Vice President Kamala Harris, who he said was a tough cookie. He added, "It's a lot easier being Donald's enemy politically than it is to be seen to be Donald's friend." Ruth Davidson, now in the House of Lords, said watch this space when asked if she might make a David Cameron-style comeback to mainstream politics. Davidson quit as leader of the Scottish Conservatives in 2019. "I promised my partner I wouldn't take another big job until my son started school, and he's just finished primary 1, so we'll see. Watch this space," she said. "I'm not saying I necessarily think my next big job is going to be in politics. It doesn't have to be, but I'm 45, I'm not nearing retirement." Describing herself as a cringing Presbyterian, she admitted feeling uncomfortable in the Lords and said she would vote herself out given the chance. "It is an absolute privilege to sit in the Lords, and I never forget that. It's amazing to see, and if you're in a debate on Ukraine or an issue like that, there's a former Sea Lord there, a former head of the army, and also people who were big parts of my childhood, such as Michael Heseltine. But I am such a cringing Presbyterian with an utter sense of not being worthy, because there are so many connotations with rank and title and stuff like that. Growing up and going to school in Buckhaven and Fife with parents from 2 Glasgow council estates, there's a feeling I shouldn't be there, and I feel uncomfortable. For now, though, the honeymoon feeling remains." And that piece was written by Alison Rowett and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 5th of August, from the Arts and Entertainment section. Woman Who is Staking Her Claim to be the Definitive Carmen of Our Time, by Keith Bruce. Festival Opera, Carmen. Festival Theatre, Edinburgh, 4 stars. In a succession of recent productions, Gail Arquez has staked her claim to be the definitive Carmen of our time, and Her performance is the chief reason to catch Andreas Homoki's staging of the first opera in the 2024 Edinburgh International Festival programme. This production is already well tried and, Samir Purga's Don Jose aside, the supporting cast is intact. Save the title role, its characterisation eschews subtlety. The tenor leaps straight from hapless to deranged obsessive during Act 1, while Elbenita Kajtazi's Michaela makes a feisty start, kneeing her Seville visit seducer in the crotch, but is later seemingly startled by the spotlight for her Act 3 aria. Such inconsistency is a willful ingredient of a production that jumps across the centuries in costuming and staging, as it makes play of the origins of one of the most popular operas in the canon. The Opera Comique in Paris is both where Carmen premiered and where this version originated, and elements of the venue are recreated in the festival theatre stage in a show that asks its audience why we still want to see it, a century and a half later. The answer, of course, is for the music. With the Scottish Chamber Orchestra under the baton of Louis Lagrange in the pit, in that department it is in the firmest ground. Rarely do musicians sound to be enjoying their work as much as the SCO players do from the wonderful overture onwards. As well as holding the stage as a performer, Arquez has the vocal instrument to make the most of the part, and both Purga and John Fernand Setti as Escamillo are well suited to their roles. But it is in the smaller characters and the consistency of the chorus that the musical excellence of the production is grounded. Scenically, this is a Carmen stripped back to its essentials, even if Don Jose is a character subjected to the most dressing and undressing. The use of a false proscenium, curtains, stark lighting cues and switches of perspective that include the audience in its knowing theatricality when the house lights go up will not be to all tastes. But the first night audience, applauding the big tunes while sitting on its hands at other points in the night, seemed to be in on the joke. And that was Carmen at the Festival Theatre Edinburgh, 4 stars, reviewed by Keith Bruce.
The Herald on the 6th of August and the news section. A&E waiting times improve sharply, new figures show by Jodie Harrison. Waiting times at Scotland's emergency departments have improved sharply, but almost 1/3 are still waiting too long, new figures show. Statistics released on Tuesday by Public Health Scotland, PHS, shows 68% of attendances in the week up to July 28 was seen within 4 hours. Despite falling well short of the 95% target set by the Scottish Government, the figure increased from 63.5% the previous week. The proportion of people waiting longer than 12 hours also dropped between the 2 weeks, falling from 5.6% to 5%. The proportion of those waiting more than 8 hours also dropped from 12.9% to 10.8%. But the latest monthly figures, also released on Tuesday, showed a drop in performance in June. Those seen within 4 hours dropped from 70.8% to 69%, while a number of people waiting more than 12 hours increased from 4.2% to 4.5%. Those waiting 8 hours or more jumped from 10% to 10.7%. Health Secretary Neil Gray said the latest weekly figures, which show performance is moving in the right direction, with over 2/3 of people being seen in our emergency departments within 4 hours. Although we have the best performing core A&E departments in the UK, performance remains below the level we all wish to see. We are continuing to work with boards to reduce long waits and support delivery of sustained improvements. Services are facing sustained pressure, and this is not unique to Scotland, with similar challenges being felt right across the UK. This year's Scottish budget provides more than £19.5 billion for health and social care, and an extra £500 million for frontline boards. And that was by Jodie Harrison. The Herald on the 6th of August, and the news section, Advice for Students After Results Day by Garrett Stell. Results Day features its fair share of celebrations, but many students will be left unsure of what comes next. Even for those who receive the grades they needed and have a place waiting for them at work, university or college, entering the world after school is a daunting task. Jim McNichol, Student Recruitment and Marketing Manager for the University of Highlands and Islands, UHI, helps students progress from school to work, college, training and university every year. She said that one of the most important messages for families on Results Day is remembering that there is more than one path to success. It will look different for each student. Some students have applied to university but haven't received an offer on Results Day will be entered into clearing. Once a student's application status has been updated on UCAS, they can search for available courses. Ms McNichol said it's always smartest for students to contact the provider directly when they find a course that interests them, as they may be able to secure a verbal offer straight away. But she added, university isn't the only option available, or the only way to put recently earned SQA credentials to use. If you want to start studying while keeping your career options open, a Higher National Certificate, HNC, or our Higher National Diploma, HND course might be ideal. These courses typically have lower entry requirements than a degree and can serve as a pathway to many university degree programs. She said the HNC and HND courses at UHI campus or other colleges can give students a fast-track option to enter a second or third year degree program. They can also help secure employment, as many courses are designed with specific careers in mind. UHI offers advice on how specific courses can help students progress and plan their route through college or university. Care experience graduate Jacob Buchan, who studied at UHA Moray, now works as a support practitioner at the same employer where he completed a placement in his studies. He said that his qualifications gave him a clear roadmap. From a level 5 pathway course, I moved on to an NC, and then with support from UHI onto the HNC Social Services. I love the nurturing atmosphere at UHI, where staff and your classmates genuinely care about each other. If none of that sounds right, however, Miss McNichol said there's no harm in taking the time to make sure the next step is the right one. Taking a year out before starting university can be a fantastic decision. It allows you time to gain work experience, decide precisely what you want to study, and even reset exams if you're not satisfied with results. And many of our campuses and learning centres offer hires in person and online. During a gap year, you can also save money to support yourself when you eventually begin your university or college journey. Whatever the results, Ms McNichol said the students and parents shouldn't feel overwhelmed and stressed the importance of keeping the future in perspective. It's natural to feel a mix of emotions. For many, these grades will open the door to exciting new opportunities and mark a clear path forward in their academic journey. For others, the results might not be what they hoped for, and the days ahead may bring challenges as they explore alternative paths to achieve their goals. This is just one step in your journey, and there are many options and support available to help you find the right path. Stay positive and take each moment as it comes. The future is still full of possibilities. In addition to the national helplines available to students on Results Day, individual colleges and universities are also available to help students who have a condition or unconditional offer, or those are considering applying for a course. UHI has expert advisors available on Monday to Friday between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m, as well as extending hours on Tuesday 6 August, Wednesday 7 August and Thursday 15 August until 6 p.m. Call 01463 279 190 or message at www.uhi.ac.uk/course-inquiries or email courses@uhi.ac.uk. And that was by Garrett Stell. The Herald on the 6th of August and the news section. Balfour Beatty named as A9 contractor by Jody Harrison. Engineering firm Balfour Beatty has been awarded a £185 million contract to complete the next stage of the infrastructure project to dual the A9. The company has been picked by Transport Scotland to enlarge a section of the road between Tomatin and Moy in the Scottish Highlands, approximately 21 kilometres, 13 miles south of Inverness. As part of the contract, Balfour Beatty will upgrade 9.6 kilometres of single carriageway to dual carriageway, construct 4 major bridges along the route, as well as deliver new side roads, together with various junction upgrades. The firm will also provide over 10 kilometres of improved active travel routes to promote and encourage cycling and walking in the local area. The A9 dualling Tomatin to Moy project is expected to improve road safety, journey times and reliability for all road users, including pedestrians, cyclists and bus passengers. It is hoped the scheme will generate economic growth, supporting businesses, communities and tourism throughout Scotland by strengthening the link between Scotland's Central Belt and the Highlands and Islands. Balfour Beatty pledged to reduce carbon emissions during the construction phase by sourcing local materials wherever possible, helping to minimise the number of heavy goods vehicles movements and deliveries to and from site. The A9 dualling Tomatin to Moy project forms part of the Transport Scotland's multi-billion-pound A9 dualling programme, for which a delivery plan was announced in December 2023. It marks the third section of the programme to begin construction following the successful completion of the Kincraig to Dalradi and the Luncarty to Pass of Burnham sections, which opened in 2017 and 2021 respectively, the latter also being constructed by Balfour Beatty. Hector Macaulay, MBE, Managing Director of Balfour Beatty's regional business in Scotland, said, "We are pleased to have been appointed to deliver the latest phase of the A9 dualling programme, building on our proven track record of successful major infrastructure delivery. The A9 dualling Tomatin to Moy project will continue to deliver far-reaching benefits to the Scottish economy, creating hundreds of new jobs and stimulating growth of business communities, especially in the tourism industry, as well as improving road user safety. At construction peak, the project is expected to employ 180 people, including 8 graduate and apprenticeship positions." And that was by Jodie Harrison. The Herald on the 6th of August and the news section. Fire crews work through the night to extinguish Glasgow blaze by Jodie Harrison. Firefighters have been battling through the night to put out a blaze at a derelict property in Glasgow. Crews were alerted to the fire in a derelict 3-storey building in Carlton Place just after 8 p.m. on Monday night. 9 appliances in total, including 2 high-reach vehicles, were sent to the address to extinguish the blaze. A Scottish Fire and Rescue Service spokesman said a single high-reach vehicle was still at the scene on Tuesday morning. The spokesman said, "We are alerted at 8:04 p.m. on Monday 5th of August to reports of building fire on Carlton Place, Glasgow. At its height, Operations Control mobilised 7 fire appliances and 2 high-reach vehicles to the scene. Firefighters are working to tackle and contain a well-developed fire affecting the roof of a 3-storey derelict building." And that was by Jodie Harrison. The Herald on the 6th of August and the news section. Scottish exam results turmoil as pupils get blank mails by Jodie Harrison. Pupils and parents have been left in limbo after a fault in the distribution of exam results. Anxious teenagers across Scotland were due to receive their results today for national higher and advanced higher exams. Many received blank emails which should have contained pupils' grades. The emails were sent out to pupils who have signed up for a MySQA account, but while some have got their results, others have come through empty. The SQA helpline has told some parents there have been a few inquiries about empty emails and that the authority is looking into it. ALCAS has confirmed that some pupils have received information about their university admission applications without knowing what their results were. An SQA spokesperson said the issue had now been resolved. The spokesperson said, "We have resolved a technical issue that impacted candidates who signed up to receive the results by email only using the MySQA service. Texts were not impacted, and the vast majority of learners who signed up to MySQA received their results as expected. We apologise for any concern caused to learners who experienced a delay before receiving their MySQA email with their results attached." The SQA helpline has said results should be coming through within the next half hour for those who haven't had them yet. Herald Education correspondent James McKinney, who was alerted to the situation early this morning, said the glitch was another shambles for the SQA, which was at one point due to be abolished by the Scottish Government. He said all over the country, young people have woken up excited and anxious to find out their exam results, but for many of them, things have started off in just about the worst possible way. We don't know why yet, but it seems that lots of students have received emails with a blank space where their results should be. Some people have also received blank texts. Some people haven't received text at all. This doesn't seem to be a regional issue, because I've been told that students in the same house have had different experiences, with one receiving their results in an email while another gets the blank version. Our correspondent added, this looks very much like an issue with the mail merging function used to send out those sort of mass communications, but it is absolutely humiliating for the SQA. This, don't forget, is the organisation that was also unreliable and that had so entirely lost the confidence of teachers and students that the SNP decided it was going to be abolished. They have since rowed back from that position, so now we're basically expecting a rebrand, but yet another results day scandal will raise major questions about the competence of an organisation that is charged with overseeing not just an important day in the education calendar, but one of the most stressful days in the young lives of Scotland's students. Scottish Conservative Shadow Cabinet Secretary for Education Liam Kerr, MSP, said, this chaotic and shambolic situation is the last thing pupils across Scotland needed on results day. Receiving a blank email will only have added to pupils' worries about how they did in their exams. Successive SNP education secretaries have dithered and delayed on reforming the SQA for too long. Even then, their plans amount to a sticking plaster rather than the widespread changes that Scottish education requires. Those in charge at the SQA must urgently be upfront as to why many students have failed to receive their results as they expected to, and ensure these errors are rectified as soon as possible for all those affected. Scottish Labour education spokesperson Pam Duncan-Glancy said, young people across Scotland should have woken up this morning to exciting news. Instead, they have woken up to a new level of SQA chaos. It is simply unacceptable that thousands of young people have been forced to undergo real anxiety due to this SQA technical failure. She added the results speak for themselves. The poverty-related attainment gap is at its highest ever level, while attainment has also fallen for all. Higher pass rates are equal to the lowest level on record, and pass rates are well below the pre-pandemic standard. Despite the best efforts of teachers, staff and Scotland's young people, they are being forced to pay the price of 17 years of SNP failure and SQA chaos. Young people in Scotland have been badly let down, and the First Minister and Cabinet Secretary cannot avoid responsibility. And that was by Jodie Harrison.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday, the 6th of August, 2024, from the business section. Back to school shopping fails to lift high street sales. This article is by Brian Donnelly. Early back to school purchases were not enough to stem the dip in Scottish sales during a disappointing July. Retail experts said Scots prioritised leisure activities, socialising and holidays last month rather than shopping, according to latest figures. Sales of larger items fared poorly, and sales of TVs dipped following the end of the Euros, while purchases ahead of the start of the new school term later this month did not have enough impact to make a difference. Total sales in Scotland decreased by 1.2% year-on-year, compared with July 2023, when they had grown 4.6%, the Scottish Retail Consortium, the SRC, KPMG Scottish Retail Sales Monitor, showed. This was above the 3-month average decrease of 1.6% and below the 12-month average growth of 1.5%. Adjusted for inflation, the year-on-year decline was 1.4%. Sales on a like-for-like basis decreased by 0.7%, compared with July 2023, when they had increased by 3.5%. This is above the 3-month average decrease of 1.3% and below the 12-month average growth of 1.3%. David Lonsdale, director of the Scottish Retail Consortium, said, "Early purchases associated with the looming return of Scottish schools wasn't enough to stem a fourth consecutive real terms monthly decline in the value of retail sales in July. Scots were still chary of spending in stores, as they instead prioritised leisure activities, socialising and eating out, and holidays. Cosmetics and grooming products, toys and laptops did well, as did back-to-school items as families sought to spread out the cost. However, larger products such as furniture and household appliances continued to fare poorly, and sales of TVs dipped following the Euros. Groceries also fell back. This presents shopkeepers with a tricky balancing act as they contend with underwhelming revenues, whilst supply chain and statutory costs continue to rise. Retailers will be looking for some relief on the latter when the new Chancellor and Scottish Finance Secretary set their respective budgets later this autumn. The figures, which cover the period from June 30th to July 27th, showed that total food sales decreased by 0.3% compared to July 2023, when they had increased by 9.1%. July was above the 3-month average decrease of 0.4% and below the 12-month average growth of 3.9%. Total non-food sales decreased by 2% in July compared with July 2023, when they had increased by 0.9%. This was above the 3-month average decrease of 2.7% and below the 12-month decrease of 0.6%. Adjusted for the estimated effect of online sales, total non-food sales decreased by 2% in July, which was the same as July 2023, when they had also decreased by 2%. Linda Ellett, UK Head of Consumer, Retail and Leisure at KPMG, said, "Retailers will be hoping the arrival of better weather will prompt an upturn in fortunes following a disappointing July. The latest data has shown a fall in total sales compared to last year, including both food and non-food items, as consumers continue to be wary about how much they spend in the face of fluctuating finance levels. Spending levels continue to be governed by whether households have been able to absorb the likes of mortgage and rent increases, or had to limit their spend elsewhere as a consequence." That article was by Brian Donnelly. This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday the 6th of August 2024 from the business section. Closing the loop in Scotland's foundation industries. This article is by Christopher Pilgrim. The foundation industries, comprising glass, ceramics, cement, metal, paper and chemicals, are pivotal to a successful economy. These industries account for 3/4 of the materials we encounter daily. Across the UK, the foundation industries boast a collective turnover of £67.5 billion and support the employment of 250,000 people, many of whom work in Scotland. Addressing supply chain efficiency and waste management in the foundation industries is essential to reducing emissions and creating economic opportunities. Scotland's Circular Economy Route Map, published in 2022, details the benefits of implementing a circular economy, which reconsiders a material's life cycle and allows industry to reuse, repurpose, or recycle resources. An economy that eliminates waste and extends the typical lifespan of a material requires systematic change across supply chains. Creating closed loops means materials that can be reused or repurposed are returned to their manufacturer at the end of their service life and regenerated into other products. This approach contrasts the traditional linear economy, which relies heavily on disposable products. The Scottish whisky industry has historically been a model of low-waste production and reuses co-products like spent grain and pot ale for animal feed. As the industry furthers its decarbonisation efforts, these materials are now used in anaerobic digestion plants to produce energy and soil conditioners. Researchers are also exploring co-product use in food, cosmetics, and biofuel. A partnership between Falkirk Distillery and biotechnology company MyAlgae has reduced waste and water output. Recycling whisky co-products to grow microalgae, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, offers an alternative to pet food and reduces the dependency on wild-caught fish. Future innovations include co-locating distilleries and biotech facilities to create on-site water recycling solutions, enhancing the sector's water efficiency. Despite Scotland's leadership in the oil and gas industry, North Sea hydrocarbons pose a decommissioning challenge for nearly 600 offshore platforms. The Ardeshir port near Inverness, once a major oil rig manufacturing yard, will be repurposed as a decommissioning facility. Plans include a £300 million green steel fabrication plant powered by offshore wind and an energy from waste EFW plant. This initiative will reuse steel from offshore oil drilling platforms into structures for offshore wind turbines. As Scotland progresses towards a net zero society, rethinking industrial waste management and exploring innovative reuse methods are vital. Scotland's commitment to a circular economy emphasises the importance of partnership and strategic planning to improve the sustainability of materials. Collaboration with the foundation industries is necessary to unlock Scotland's economic opportunities whilst driving a sustainable future. These innovations require substantial support. Innovate UK, part of UK Research and Innovation, that's UKRI, works to create a better future by investing in businesses which develop life-changing innovations. UKRI's Transforming Foundation Industries, that's TFI, challenge, delivered by Innovate UK, the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, and the Economic and Social Research Council, plays a pivotal role in unlocking these opportunities. The TFI challenge is transforming the foundation industries, making them more competitive and creating well-paid jobs, particularly in Scotland, and helping the UK to decarbonise. That article was by Christopher Pilgrim.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, Tune Review, tell your friends about our service.